us to
Nashville is now the dean of Pacific Northwest College of Art,
Okay.
which is right down the
And
Pearl
then we pick them up and take them to work.
Not too far.
Yeah, okay.
Like the old Alpha district.
Oh, yeah.
We're able to
Excellent.
kind of pick up on the line so that we're not
Thanks for your years.
stepping in anybody's yard.
A lot of good things. Portland set a pathway for us and so
So
many.
that they can pay.
Every time I see a TriMet bus or vehicle or light rail, I just think of how they got such a head start out
Yeah.
there. Good.
All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Have most folks here, whether online or in person. Appreciate everyone being here. I know not everyone was here the first time, so I'll go over a recap of the last meeting. We can do some introductions so everybody gets familiar with each other. And then we'll go through a preview and discussion of the outreach plan, the different activities we're going to be doing throughout the planning process. So next steps, needs from you as a steering committee, and then we'll hopefully get you guys out of here on time. So if we could just go around the room, we can start in person, and then we'll move to the online folks. So Billy, I think we can start with you. If you all could just tell us your name, or which organization you work for, and maybe your favorite mode.
Okay. Billy Higgins, I'm the Capital Grants Administrator at WeGo Public Transit, and my favorite mode is walking.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning. Yeah, Felix Castrodad with WeGo Transit. Jetpack, but we don't have those, so I like riding the bus.
Orlando, we go transit as well. We found light rail, but unfortunately can't do that here, but second we bus.
Russ Brashear, Murfreesboro Transit. Probably weird to say anything besides bus, so North Bus.
Anna Perry with Mid-Cumberland Human Resource Agency. I like to be in control, so I have to say my car.
I'm Meg Kraft. I'm with the Greater Nashville Regional Council with their INA team. And honestly, same. I feel like I'm a really good driver and I'm good driving. Just wish everyone else maybe knew what they were doing too.
My name is Ed Cole. I serve on the RTA board representing Davidson County. Have been involved in transportation in a number of ways, including Senior Ride Nashville back at the very beginning. My favorite mode, this is going to sound strange. I love cars. I've always loved, I'm a kid of the, well, beyond any of you, when cars were kind of the focal point of life. But at this age, at my stage of living, I love walking.
I'm Taylor Lee. I'm with GNRC. I'm on the planning team focusing on the MPO, the transportation planning. My favorite mode is tandem bicycle. It's not available. I love, I think subway or any kind of light rail is my favorite.
Hello, I'm Carrie Brumfield with Senior Ride Nashville, and I'm a walker.
Max Baker with GNRC. As a former freight person, I would have to say rail, but I think I'm gonna follow what Billy said, just at a little bit faster speed and say jogging. I like to go for a good jog. Daniel Caparella, transportation planner with GNRC. Definitely cycling, favorite mode.
Nina Mukherjee, Senior Planner, GNRC. Any sort of public transport, be it bus, be it like rail, any sort of public transport.
My name is Isabel. I'm a planning intern here, and I have to say car.
Good morning. I'm Jessica Hill, the Director of Community Regional Planning at GNRC. And I will pick light rail. Coming from Charlotte, it was one of my favorite public transportation modes. But if I had to pick an all-time favorite mode, it'd be the airplane to get me to farther distances and destinations.
All right, thank you, Jessica. We'll move to folks online. Mike, we can start with you.
Mike Ringenberg, Clarksville Transit. Favorite mode of transportation is a farm tractor. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. I just turned the volume up, so you should be good. All right,
Okay.
let's go with Emily next.
This is Emily Dukoch with TDOT's Office of Mobility and Accessible Transportation. My favorite mode is definitely walking. I love the convenience, not having to park.
Thank you, Emily. Let's go with Jill.
Jill Hall with the Clarksville MPO, and mine's my car.
Thanks, Jill. Patricia?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Patricia Nesbitt with Clarksville Transit System, and I would have to say car.
All right, go with Paula.
Hi, this is Paula Daigle with Agewell, Middle Tennessee, and I have to go car as well.
All right, got more cars than I expected. And then we'll finish it out with Shay.
Good morning, Shay Northfield, Transportation Planner with GNRC, and my favorite mode is the bike.
All right. So you've heard from everyone, you've met everyone. We've got a pretty good mix of transportation providers, both on the public sector and from nonprofit providers as well. We've got us as GNRC staff, as well as state agencies. So pretty good mix of people, both in the room and online. This will be our steering committee for the next, I guess, 5 months as we go through this planning process. But I'll just give everyone a quick recap of what we talked about last meeting, as well as just things to know as we move forward throughout the planning process. So just as a reminder, the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan, I'll be referring to it as the CHSTP, both on your agendas as well as in meeting invites from now on. It's a pretty lengthy acronym, so try to keep it shorter. But we are required by federal legislation, the most recent being the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, to prepare a coordinated public transit human services transportation plan. We typically do this around every 5 years in tandem with our regional transportation plan update. So it's developed and approved through a process that includes participation from all of our target populations, those being seniors, individuals with disabilities, and people with low income. We're including veterans in this plan update, as we feel that's a relevant population that we need to study and understand their needs. And the plan guides the selection of projects through 2 funding sources, one being the 5310, the Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities program. That's a Federal Transit Administration program that has been renewed, that we receive funding through every year, as well as the Job Access and Reverse Commute program that used to be a federal program, but WEGO has been kind enough to continue that program through 5307 funds, so that our providers have access to those funds each year through this plan. Our study area is 15 counties. We partnered with Clarksville MPO. So 15 counties in across Tennessee and Kentucky, including Christian County, and then Murray County, you'll see, which includes our MPO, but not technically in the development district. So those are our 15 counties that we'll be using as a study area. Pretty large area, but as you all know, our target populations are dispersed throughout the region, and so they all need access to transportation, and that's why we've included such a large area. The goals of the plan are to improve awareness of services and use of technology to access services, to increase mobility, accessibility, and ridership, to increase transportation options for our target populations, as well as others, and increase the number of communities in the region with access to transportation services, both fixed route, on demand, as well as walking and biking, and improve the quality of those services for our target populations, as well as everyone. You heard Max Baker from our data team present some of the existing conditions, both from a transportation service perspective as well as demographics. We talked about the 3 target populations as well as carless individuals and veterans, where they are located in the region and where transit is currently being served. We talked about the demographics and trends in the region since the pandemic and how population growth has impacted transportation services, and we identified some gaps in existing information and our data analysis to guide the development of a survey for providers. So we'll go through just a couple of those things just to remind you all. This is just the total of all 3 target populations, as you can see on the screen. The transit lines, so the fixed route lines and transit stops throughout the region. Not all of our populations, so more than half of our target populations do not have access to transit. So you'll see in the areas where transit does not reach, so, some of those more rural counties, those folks have to rely on Mid-Cumberland, Senior Ride, as well as other public transit providers to be able to access transportation. And then in terms of our 3 target populations, there's a lot of overlap. So between older adults, disabled population, as well as population in poverty, about 30% of the total population falls into at least one of those groups, and about 22% of the total population or the target population is in more than one category. So you all know this, but there's a lot of overlap between our groups, and veterans fall within a lot of those, at least one of those 3 populations typically as well. So any improvement to transportation, affects all of our target populations significantly. In terms of takeaways, service needs and demands are increasing as our population grows. Our region, Clayton County area, is growing rapidly. And as the population ages, those needs are increasing. Funding is obviously not enough between those 2 sources that we talked about earlier, MTID and JARC. It's not enough to keep all of our providers operating each year. We need more dedicated sources. And also those transportation needs are very unique compared to other roadway sources or other transit needs. All of our target populations are limited in their income and spending power. Fixed routes may not serve all desired or required destinations. As you saw on the map, they don't necessarily serve the rural areas or some other areas of our region where those target populations are located. And then each target population has unique needs, ADA requirements, as well as other needs to get to medical appointments, to go grocery shopping, to really do anything that requires transportation from their origin to their destination. And then public infrastructure is lacking. As we all know, our fixed route system doesn't go everywhere. And, due to funding limitations, our demand response, has lots of improvements that we could make to help our target populations get around other than driving. So I know for the folks who weren't able to attend last meeting, I think there's a couple of discussion questions we'd like to ask the whole group. One of them being, are there additional populations that need to be considered? We've talked about, obviously, population in poverty, older adults, disabled, carless, and veterans. Are there other subsets that we need to be considering that we haven't talked about thus far? And I'll just open it up to the room as well as folks online. And if you think we've covered all our bases, then that's totally fine too. All right, that sounds like a consensus to me.
I've got just a thought, and it doesn't really fit within the federal requirement here, but there is a population that is not old, not disabled, and yet is very interested in not being dependent on the car. I'm just going around the table, the people in the room here that indicated biking, walking, transit, even airplanes. So I just think in the planning process, to kind of keep that in mind, we have these other categories that the federal law requires us to look at, which are very important. I've certainly been involved in some of those activities. But politically, as we look ahead and try to get support for the things we're talking about, I think there's a population that we need to always keep in the back of our mind, and many you here looking at you would be in that category of not car-centric people, but have resources, are not disabled, and are not old. So I just put that out there as more of just a thought category rather than one of the definitions that we have to pay attention to following the federal requirements.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think with this plan update, we're sort of looking to go above and beyond and not just consider what's federally required. I think the more we sort of isolate the needs of our target populations, the less we understand that improvements to transit service and roadway improvements, can benefit everyone. And I think, as we go through the process in Nashville of, a potential referendum to have dedicated funding, that obviously opens up a lot of opportunities for transit service, but also for, transportation improvements in general. So we're keeping an eye on that. And I think that it's a good point to, include just the general population in our planning process.
Like, not necessarily a target population, but when you look at areas where you say, well, you have fixed route there, people have access to fixed route. I think you need to look also at what is the level of service of that fixed route, because you may have access to a bus that comes once an hour or less. And, is that even an option for people, knowing that, oh yeah, I can get the bus, but, I have same thing with like the train, you take the train in the morning and you have to go back, good luck, until the afternoon. So I think you need to take account also for what is the level of service that you get as well, to make sure whether that is not just have access, but what is the access that you get, and look for improvements on those, or see that as even as a gap. You still have access, but it's not very reliable.
Yeah. And is it feasible? Can they get to the stop?
So,
yeah. For those that want to take, fixed route.
It's not just access, it's also having the employees to operate the service. And, we want to extend our hours later in the evening, but I can't even keep enough drivers to do what we do now. And I'd like to see a younger population of drivers come in, but I'm just not seeing any interest out of that age. And so, probably needs to be something done in that area to try to attract younger people. And I don't know, I think I'd rather be driving the bus than working at McDonald's or something. We pay pretty good, so I don't know.
I know we talked about that a lot last time, and I think that's one thing and I'll go through this later in the slides, but that's one thing we're looking to learn, especially from you providers, is, what are the operations challenges? What are the funding challenges that we'll learn through our survey, as well as, one-on-one meetings. So we welcome that information. I think it'll strengthen our list of solutions and actions that we can take throughout the planning process. So are there any other additional trends from a data analysis perspective, or other key takeaways that we're not considering that we haven't mentioned? All right. Great. Well, we can go into more information on our outreach plan. We're just in the beginnings of drafting a couple of materials that I'll go through, but I think what we're looking for from you all is feedback on if our approach is the right approach. You all work with and closely with your clients, who are our target populations, as well as are very knowledgeable and experts about providing that transportation. So we're really looking to you for feedback and help along the way to make sure that we're asking the right questions, going to the right locations, and surveying the right people. So I'll just go through some of the components of our outreach plan. So we're in the process of drafting 2 surveys. So one is a provider survey and one is a user survey. Obviously, the provider survey will go out to you all as well as any other stakeholders that you think we should send it to. But I'll go into both of the goals and objectives of those surveys in a minute. We're planning on having 2 to 3 public outreach events at senior centers, veteran centers, and other community spaces. So if you have suggestions on places that hold events weekly, we have a pretty good idea through our INA team as well as our aging staff, centers that we partner with and contract with. But if you have places that people congregate, I think you all probably know as well as we do that we'll probably be more successful if we meet folks where they're at rather than having a separate event where we ask them to travel there. That kind of defeats the transportation purpose. But we'll have 2 to 3 of those events where we'll essentially be, we'll have activities and be just disseminating the survey to gather folks' information and tell their transportation stories. And then one-on-one interviews with you all on, not just the questions in the survey, but a more qualitative approach to understand exactly what your needs are in delivering these transportation services. So outreach objectives, we want to hear from community members as well as stakeholders such as yourselves about the transportation experiences, needs, and challenges. This is probably much less of a educational plan process. We're looking to be educated by the information that you all have. We want to share resources for transportation options available in the region. I think last meeting we talked about how we don't necessarily have the best way of accessing exactly what the list of transportation options is. There may be some organizations that are not included or can only offer services to specific populations that we might not know of. We want to place emphasis on outreach to older adults, individuals with disabilities, as well as veterans and people who are low income. So again, if you are aware of events that folks congregate at, that it would be good to attend. We're obviously open to that. And then planning events in different counties. It's a pretty large region. We want to have geographic equity, and the information that we're gathering from people who use our transportation system as well as providers. So if we can get surveys out and host events, in different counties, not just, some of our urban counties, but also our rural counties, we're really looking to do that, as well as creating inclusive outreach events. Again, we're sensitive to the timing of events. We know that folks have difficulties getting to places, and so we want to meet them where they're at. In terms of the provider survey, we're really looking at a couple of goals for that. But we're working through a draft, and we'll be sending that to you as well. But I think what we're looking for is determining how transportation services can more effectively meet user needs, identifying available services by geography and target population, understanding exactly what they're designed to do, understanding the ridership and usage by trip purpose. Last meeting, we talked about difficulties in maintaining databases and understanding exactly, origins and destinations of each rider and the needs of those populations, identifying barriers to providing transportation service, and lastly, identifying opportunities to increase funding and provide improved service to meet the needs of our target populations. So I'll pause there. Do these goals seem like the right goals? Are there additional opportunities for us to ask different questions? Are there specific questions you all would like to ask that you may not have the answer to or you don't have data for? So I'll sort of pause there before we move on.
Yeah, a question, and you service providers probably wrestle with this too. When we talk about service options to potential riders or constituents, often I don't think we go far enough in sort of getting outside the box on what those options could be. Because the image that one person may bring to that is a fixed route transit bus. or if they've lived in other cities, that may take different forms. I know when we were doing the original outreach work on the idea of Senior Ride Nashville, we had to spend a lot of time letting people just talk to us about their lives and how they get around. And we had to avoid using words like mobility and, good planning terms that we use, but just talk to us about how you get around and where there are problems in your daily life that getting around better might be a benefit for you.
Right.
So I just, in terms of the survey, the most creative people in the room are the providers, because this is what you focus on. But it would be important, I think, to say, are there ways of furthering that conversation so that we're not limiting it to just what people's current knowledge of what the services are, but we're really tapping into their knowledge of what their needs are, and then see if those two align.
So focusing more on, what they would like it to look like rather than what the issues are with the current service, and sort of telling more of a qualitative story.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, this is Emily with TDOT. One question that I would have for the provider survey would be to ask them about the trips they aren't able to provide. I know that providers get a lot of requests for trips that are for purposes they don't serve or outside of their service area. And I think that's valuable information.
Okay. So we had more funding, what services would everyone provide if the sky was the limit? Gotcha.
More drivers, and it's not always funding. Sometimes it goes back to equipment or drivers.
And I think that ties back in with the point I was trying to make too. There may be services that you would like to provide that you just can't explore because of funding limits. And if they can set that aside.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So in terms of the provider survey, these are sort of the sections that we've been talking about internally. So asking first about service quality, on-time performance, scheduling, existing conditions and issues, service area limitations, going back to what you just said, if you could offer to an additional county, would you? Ridership trends, trip purpose, increasing demand, funding limitations and operational challenges, going back to what you all have said about, difficulties hiring drivers as well as actually purchasing vehicles. I know, Billy, we've talked about how there's a delay in actually receiving vehicles, even though the awards for Incident and JARC have gone out. And then again, opportunities for improvement. So any other topics that we need to consider and before we move on?
I think one thing that I don't see on here, and this is more of a question to the group, is there any physical limitation in terms of being able to pick people up or drop them off at a certain location, like the ramp won't get to the curb, or are there infrastructure things like that that are limiting? And is that worth capturing in this?
The person's ability to use the transportation.
Yeah.
Not just access it, but get on and off physically.
Yeah.
Or have a vehicle get down a driveway or a rural road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a more comprehensive understanding of when they leave the house to when they actually get to their destination, what are the issues in each part of that?
Lack of sidewalks.
Yeah.
For senior ride, we also experienced the lack of technology for our riders and being able to connect with them without having a smartphone or even a phone at all presents challenges.
Gotcha.
This really isn't a physical barrier, but Max, I think it is relevant. And that's the whole question of trust. Again, with the work with Senior Ride, you could go through the physical aspects and it will or won't work. But looming in many people's minds was, I'm going to walk out my door and get in that car with a stranger. And so I think the trust issue, which is an advantage that providers have because there's a legitimate identity that's already out there. But I think the trust issue in terms of new options is really important, especially as we get older.
Yeah, maybe folks that haven't accessed that service before, but are now, dealing with the challenges of not being as mobile, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I know, I have a question on staffing shortages. I know one of the items is just getting drivers or finding people that are willing to take the job and start as a driver. Is there also training challenges of getting them trained if they need a special driver's license level? Or once they receive that, do they pick up and leave for a higher paying job? I mean, so in addition to just staffing shortages, what are there other staffing issues and challenges that you're having or experiencing?
For us, we don't require a CDL. We just require the passenger endorsement, but there's a lot. I mean, they have to have a clean background. They have to have a clean driving record. And unfortunately, these days it's really difficult. Like Russ was talking about finding the younger population. It's kind of hard to find those. So that's the challenge that we face. The licensing, I'm sure you guys have a problem with the CDLs.
We do offer training for CDL, like they can come. So we're focusing more on, to be honest, when we can, on customer service. Like if you have good customer service skills, we'll make you a driver.
Yeah.
Rather than that, because I'm a truck driver, that's probably make the worst. Operators, because they don't want to deal with people. They're on their own. So it's more about those customer service skills, and we train them to get their CDL and all that. But it's hard sometimes, because especially if you're at the bottom of the pig, you don't get the best schedules. You get splits in your runs, so you can work a few hours in the mornings, and then you don't have anything else until other hours in the evening, and it just cuts your day. So eventually, as they advance, you get seniority, you pick better schedules, but it stops, especially for a young person coming in and then having to have those, weird schedules like that when you're the last one to pick. So it's just, I wouldn't do it. So it's hard sometimes. But yeah, yes, we sometimes have people that, stay a little bit and then they go for a higher paying job, but we've moved to incentivize better, like signing bonuses and try to put up more emphasis on following up with them through the process to make sure that they know that they're cared for and they're entering family, and so that helps sometimes. So yeah, but it's a struggle.
And I guess I would also say, think of the provider survey as a peer interview. If there is things that a transit provider, if you have a question, is somebody else doing it, or what are you doing differently? Like, this would be a great opportunity to ask that question in a survey that goes across the region to your peers. So we would look to questions that you might have that you would love to ask your peers and get that information back on a kind of regional collective scale.
Yeah, I think Jessica makes a good point. We want to understand what opportunities there are for coordination. Obviously, this is the coordinated human services plan, but because so many of you are offering different services, there may be some similarities in geography. There may be some similarities in terms of the folks that you are transporting. So I think the more that we can understand how we can help coordinate and help you all access information about each other's services. I think that's what we're looking to learn.
Even if it's as simple as a software scheduling, which is not simple, but even just knowing what y'all are softwares you're choosing to use.
So in terms of the user survey, sort of a different approach. Obviously, we're looking, as Ed said, for a more story-based, qualitative understanding of how people are getting around and what challenges they may experience. So determining how transportation services can more effectively meet the user needs, identifying transportation user needs, understanding trip purpose by mode. Obviously, we don't have a full data set of trip purpose and origin and destination region-wide. And so understanding, what locations people access the most, types of locations, whether it's medical services, grocery shopping, any of the above. identifying gaps and limitations in your user experience, and then identifying opportunities to improve service to better meet their needs and not just understand, what if they had access to exactly what kind of transportation they needed, what would that look like? And then in terms of, go for
I
it,
think
Felix.
one of the things that we've started doing a few years ago is access on demand. Access is our paratransit service. But, for those communities, you'll always have to schedule a trip at least 24 hours or more in advance. So that the on demand gives you at least a 2-hour window. And I feel like, especially because you have your doctor's appointments, things that you know in advance, but sometimes you just want to go somewhere and you just felt the need to do it, like any of us will do. And having to schedule things, days in advance is hard. Or planning around that. So sometimes to be able to provide for that flexibility and, to do things kind of on the fly, I think it's important, especially, those populations, as anybody else would like to do at the same, and it's hard, but it's more limited in terms of the times that we operate that service and the days of the week. Like, I don't think we do on demand on weekends. Maybe we do now, I can't remember. But we didn't start doing it like it was like limited between 8 and 5 and then weekdays. So no evenings, no weekends. And I can see that being an area where people would like to have more of those options that are, a given many times for many other groups. Just wanted to mention that.
And that might, give us more insight on how it impacts their quality of life. I know we talk with our aging staff all the time about, the isolation that older adults and people with disabilities can feel, and not having access to, saying, oh, I want to go meet my friend here at this time in a different county or whatever it is, and not being able to schedule that trip immediately. So, yeah, definitely.
And an observation, and forgive me, I'll be direct about this. I'm a transportation planner by training and have years in the field, so I understand these terms. But I think as we reach out through the survey, using words like user and mode don't really communicate well. They do to us, and we have to, at the end of the day, look at what we hear and define it in those ways. I understand that completely. But I would just suggest, as we use our language in talking, we could talk about the goals of the community survey. And the community would be people.
Right.
Now, they're all potential users. Yeah. But I would just offer that as a suggestion.
I think that's a good suggestion. So maybe phrasing questions more like, how do you access transportation?
Yeah.
Or instead of, saying users or using all the planner jargon. I agree.
The mayor spoke, yes, I don't think anybody here was there. The mayor, Freddie, spoke at the Rotary Club, downtown Rotary Club yesterday. And we were talking ahead of time. And he said one of the biggest challenges he has, and his speech was magnificent. He got a standing ovation. I do not want to use the word mobility. We cannot use the word. We all understand what it means. We know that's at the heart of what we're talking about. But that's not language that most people use. And it was kind of a wake-up call, I think, as we think that through.
I think that's a really great point as we actually get into drafting the survey. We'll keep that in mind.
Great.
All right, so we sort of already talked about the user survey, but I'll go into a couple of the activities that we might, not actual activities, but the types of questions that we're going to be asking at these events so that we can get your feedback and help shape, the activities that folks will be engaging in at these public events. So, the types of questions are going to be asking, do transportation options available meet your needs? Where are the greatest opportunities you see for transportation in your community? What are the barriers to accessing transportation in your community? Those can be any sort of activity, whether it's focus group based, whether it's, putting stickers on a board to, show areas that you might have more needs versus less. And then again, getting back to the qualitative aspect, really sharing your transportation story. So what's your primary mode? And I think mode is probably not the the right word to use, keeping in mind, what people on a daily basis say. Why do you use that mode? Is it a choice or is it a necessity? Would you like to explore other transportation options? If, without barriers, what would you like your transportation journeys to look like? Do you want to be able to walk to the bus stop? Do you want to be able to ride to the bus stop? Whatever, people's preferences are, to understand how we can meet their needs.
In that, one way that might help community, understand it better is also ask, what are good experiences that you've had, like to trigger some kind of memory, if there's anything they can speak of as what's good. Because, a lot of people might not have an idea of what they want, but they've had an idea of what, has felt good to them in the past. So that might be good phrasing to use as well.
And I think doing more of a focus group style might bring that out, because folks will be talking to each other about their different transportation options and experiences. So one person might say, well, I used to live in, Chicago, and it was much easier to access transportation there, and this is what it was like.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. And then, sharing resources, I think, through our aging staff and through you all, we have a pretty good idea of what options are available. So sharing those options and having you all there to talk about and offer, information about what service you provide, how they might be able to access it, how to schedule trips, that kind of stuff for folks that may not be familiar. So I think now we can get into a discussion, what additional topics or areas of interest should we focus our questions on? What types of activities, really, if you've been to an event before, or, through your planning efforts, what types of activities do people respond to? Is it more engagement activities where multiple people are talking to each other? Is it one-on-one? How do we make it inclusive? What strategies can we utilize to engage all our communities? And which community organizations and stakeholders should we partner with? So really, any answers to any of those questions. I know that's probably a lot to throw at you. So we don't have to answer all of them right now. You can think about them as you go home. And yeah.
I have one on the last point, and I know Carrie is a graduate. Leadership Middle Tennessee. Are there any other alums in the room? Okay. Well, if there is an organization that taps the leadership dimensions of every one of the counties of Middle Tennessee, it would be Leadership Middle Tennessee. And I think it might be, and I'm just putting this out there, I haven't thought it through, but it might be useful to consider engaging them, because through Leadership Middle Tennessee, the community leaders in each of the counties can be brought together. I don't care, am I off base here?
No, not at all.
Because I think in my experience with Leadership Middle Tennessee, I didn't know a lot about Dixon County. And right now, if you were to ask me who I could talk to about something in Dixon County, I could give you 4 or 5 names just as a result of my class alone. So I would just maybe think at some point, and we could get you the contact information of the executive director, but to maybe give them an opportunity to kind of provide some feedback on the process.
I think that's a great suggestion, and that also makes me think of the Transit Citizen Leadership Academy.
TCLA,
yeah.
We present there every year.
Great.
We're familiar with them. Yeah. I think those are both great suggestions. Thank you. Any other suggestions? Things that have worked in the past?
Or local community or neighborhood groups that would be a good resource to bring, to already start the conversation with, to make them aware of the effort and get their assistance to outreaching to their members or networks.
Some of the local senior centers would be excellent. I know there's a few that we provide transportation to a lot of passengers. They go there. One is in Dixon and one is in Lebanon. So they would be kind of, spread out enough that, and I'm sure that they would be willing.
Right. Yeah, we've reached out to a few of them already through our contacts through our aging staff, and Clarksville and Lebanon are both interested. And so we're exploring options of, going to, I think Wednesdays in Lebanon, they have a lunch. And so, already knowing that folks are gonna be there, and it'll be an easier way to engage.
Maybe veteran societies, American Legions, things like that.
We had success engaging and soliciting feedback through focus group types of forums. And here in Davidson County, there are, you've got organizations, and I know your staff would know this, but like 50 Forward and Matthew Walker Center, who already has, they have the programming, they've got the seniors, the older adults together. And they have been very welcoming to Senior Ride and, gauging their input.
Agricultural extension centers in some of the rural counties is a good resource. The family and community education groups for the possibility.
That's a great idea. We've actually had internal conversations about how it's going to be more difficult to reach the rural communities. Their senior centers maybe aren't as well attended and further away from any sort of transportation service. So it's a good idea.
And the meals services, those agencies that are providing services to folks at home in the rural counties.
Any other feedback? Feel free to email us or call us.
Got a comment here.
Oh, in the chat?
Yes. Patricia Nesbitt, some community partners could be, she just mentioned, okay, it was a 50 Forward Senior Renaissance Center, Operation Stand Down, St. Luke's Community House for some partners to.
Great. Thank you, Patricia. That's very helpful.
This is Paula with Agewell. The metro parks or the park system also have active older adult programming. So they might be a great resource, as well as talking to the library staffs. Those are very well attended by that population.
Okay. Thank you.
In that line, the Vanderbilt OSHA program, adult learning, extended learning, they have a great turnout too, and they would fit into the category of things that Paula was talking about.
Okay. I think Metro Nashville Public Schools also has like a adult learning center.
Adult, yes.
Okay.
Health centers.
So VA. Yeah, VAs is definitely on our list.
They're like like the dialysis.
And Tennessee Kidney Foundation has a connection with all of the dialysis.
Yeah, they apply for MSID and JARC every year, so
yeah,
you have good connections to them as well. Okay.
So in terms of with the community survey, not the user survey, but the community survey, are there questions that you would, as a provider, like to be able to ask to see a larger, broader regional response that would help you in your service delivery? I know that you don't have the full list in front of you, but if you could write your own survey, is there one question that you would want to make sure is on it?
One question that might be good to have is asking people what would trust look like for them, possibly? Like if they could, I don't know how to word it yet, but what would a trustful driver look like for them? Something like that, so we can, maybe gauge like what proof they need, that someone's trustworthy.
Well, and that could be a question, more like, what makes you feel comfortable
Yeah,
as
what makes you
accessing
feel comfortable, yeah.
transportation services. So that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I know with fixed route, one of the challenges for many people, especially if you're not used to by transit, is like, am I gonna get stuck? If I get on this bus, where is it gonna take me? What if I, how do I come back? Where do I pick it up to go? So those things that can be intimidating for somebody that has never, is trying to get ride a vehicle for the first time and maybe a little bit. And we do have a program where we, have somebody that meets with you, takes you on all the in and outs, and rides with you and shows you here's where you put your fare. Here's here's where you stand. And
Funny system.
yeah. So I mean, things like make it intimidating for them to consider using some sort of transportation, which could be like I don't know, the driver is gonna come and pick me up, for example. But things that make them intimidating, I guess, is kind of like understanding what if they don't understand the maps, for example, or the time schedules or how things work, for example, for fixed route.
Have you all seen like
How to
really?
transfer to another,
Yeah.
it's not gonna take you from, you may have to take another bus or another
Across the
mode
street, yeah.
to get to your final destination, so.
And I think that gets to managing expectations. Like if riders know exactly what to expect, then it may be easier to access service. So I think that's a good point too.
You had good experience, like have you had a lot of interest in that buddy system?
I can ask our customer care, which is provide that.
It's expanded.
Navigators.
We've navigated, our
It's
navigating staff has expanded over the last 5
Yeah,
years.
it's called Transit Navigators, and then they meet with you and show you exactly how to travel using the bus.
So do people find out about that through your website or?
I think we do have that on the website,
think so, I'm not
but
sure.
we have a staff that meets, they go to different, I don't know, you name it, community events, and they promote the availability of that program for riders or people are interested.
And then when put a they're underneath the customer care
Right.
department, so customer care representatives know that service is an option for folks when they get somebody who calls in. So they've never done this, or I don't know how to do this. They can recommend it.
Okay. I think that would be really helpful to maybe have a representative or at least their contact information as we're doing these focus groups or going out to the communities, especially in Metro and Davidson and some of your longer distance direct service buses. So yeah, I think let's be sure to follow up and have that resource.
I've got one more thought, and Paula is on the line, maybe could add to this or correct it. There's a whole population moving toward independent living facilities. And not just in Nashville, although this more developed here than in the region. But I just wonder if there's a way to provide some communication with the people in those facilities who are engaged in choices that those residents are making every day. They're trusted, they're convenient, and I would say independent living is important. Assisted living adds another dimension, but there may be some parallels. Some facilities provide both.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be some that are, catered to people who are low income,
Right.
disabled,
Yeah.
seniors through MDHA or
Yeah.
other housing authorities too.
Yeah.
So that might be another route into those.
Well, and our aging staff is actually going to those facilities, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
so that's another way that we
Those are
can
ones.
gather information for sure. Okay. Any other thoughts? All right, so what are we asking from you all? If you would like to host an event where you think you can gather folks and where we can, host an activity, disseminate surveys, please let us know. We're going to need your help sharing the survey to, both providers as well as community members who are going to be taking the user survey, identifying other stakeholders or groups like the conversation we just had right now that should be involved or can help with outreach. And then helping at our outreach events, having the providers there, I think is going to be really important. Us talking about the planning process is one thing, but then pointing them to you all and saying, here are the people that provide the transportation. Some of them may already know, some of them may not. Helping them access resources, the existing resources, I think will, help us gain more information and help them access services better. So if you're able to attend an event, that would be great. So we'll communicate as we get into more of the planning details on those events.
Does anybody have an event already planned that's coming up in the spring or summer that we could potentially maybe do a table at or get out, help spread the word, anything?
You guys might want to ask is Christine from my department with Medicare, because they are the ones who really do events.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they might also just be a good resource for where to go. That's their expertise. Yeah.
Are y'all hosting like a transit fair or anything or?
We've got a public meeting coming up April 26th to show what some of our proposed route realignments will be, possible new routes.
In Murfreesboro?
Yeah, to the housing authority.
Okay. Yeah, if you can send us the details, that'd
That's
be
a
great.
great event. And then we'll be at the Positive Aging Conference at MTSU next Friday. I think that's when that is as well. So
We typically have a booth at Earth Day.
Yes, April 21st.
I haven't looked at April yet.
I don't know why, but I think April 21st is Earth Day. For some reason, it pops in my head.
It's usually about that time.
right. Any other thoughts about outreach and things that we need to, oh, I see.
The thing is Clarksville. I know we've got some folks from Clarksville.
Yeah, we're looking at the Ajax Community Center in Clarksville as a potential location. We've already been in contact with them. So we're hoping to get some things scheduled there.
Are they going to provide drinks as well? Sorry.
You know, we need some humor.
Don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah. Ashley says she'll have a table set up in Columbia during Mule Day, the first week of April. Okay, that's good to know. Ashley, would you mind emailing me about that? You can just communicate in the chat if you don't want to unmute.
And if you are aware of other providers or community events that would get out to the community, even if it's not a targeted population, but out in the community, because they often have family and friends that may need these services. So as you all have experienced, it's easier to meet people where they are than asking them to come to a night meeting for something that they really don't maybe understand or see a lot of value, or they have conflicts. We're all busy.
And keep thinking about this as we go through the process. You know, we're going to be looking for input throughout the next, 4-5 months. So as meetings or events come up, just communicate those to us and we'll be happy to send a staff member out there or help disseminate the survey.
Actually, I have, I'll be attending it's a nonprofit meeting in Mount Juliet on, I think it's Thursday. So this would be something good to mention as well. There's so many of the community members there. Transportation is the hurdle. We were hoping to be able to assist with the homeless population in Wilson County, where they can stay at the shelter during the night, but they were trying to help them get jobs before the shelter closed. And so anyway, we're looking at all different avenues to try and see where we can jump in. So I'll definitely mention it because they may have other things going on that we can do some outreach.
And we're in the middle of developing a webpage that we'll send out to you all, so you can direct folks to that as you mention it at your various events.
Just to help to be clear, Daniel, if I were, for example, to see something forming in the way of an event, say mid-April or early May, what do I need to say to that organizer that we would bring to that event? What would it be the survey itself or?
Well, I think we're putting together a flyer.
It would depend on the event. If it's already a preset event and all they have room for is for like a table,
Yeah.
we can do that. Or if they would like a more interactive or we're engaging and we have poster boards and we've got a lot of potential activities. So I think we're flexible depending on what their interests and needs are.
Yeah, we can be prepared to do anything from small scale to large scale. Like if it needs to be a separate event or if it just needs to be communicating the survey or, that the plan is happening. Yeah.
Good. One thing that I don't know that we mentioned, but in terms of the community survey, have you thought about reaching out to major employers?
Sorry, say that again.
Reaching out to major employers. I know we get calls all the time. They can get people to go there because they don't have a car. They have transportation issues and low income and many times they need that workforce and it's hard. Of course, they're in places that are hard to reach where we don't have public transportation routes. But we do get a lot of requests, from Cheatham County, Dixon, Sumner County places where, you know, they just can't have the people there,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe to just talk to them. And sometimes, you know, they always want us to give them stuff. It's like, we can't, and it's not cheap. And sometimes it's like, you know, you can talk to them about, and we try to convey the message. It's like, have you looked other employers in, you know, that work around and may have the same issues, and try to come up with a solution that may serve the area where you are by, you know, coming up with some money and help, you know, provide alternatives to your, to attract workforce. So, you know, maybe something to explore in terms of trying to understand what the needs or what the challenges are. Because I know a lot of the people that they're trying to reach are people that need the jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And they need people to work, but the transportation is a big gap there.
So I've seen like with TDM, like travel demand management, do employer surveys for transit. Do you think, is there a need, do you think, to split and create a third channel? Or do you think within a community survey, just having, you know, I guess it's more of a question on.
I think employer needs are going to be a little bit more specific than a regular community. So maybe something that may be a little bit more tailored and focused to their needs.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there's a way to, you know, let them know that people are thinking about these issues, but sometimes you can nudge them a little bit. Like, it's not all like, gimme, you know, maybe you can have some skin in the game by trying to be proactive and make it easier. I mean, I can name you a few places here like UPS, and we've met with them so many times in the past. We're now finally getting to the point that we got some money in the budget, making some changes, and we are going to have more service now directly to UPS.
Okay.
But in the past, we met with them and even talked to them about them having a shuttle from the nearest stop, and they never wanted to you know, put some money toward that. So it's just like, it's hard. But if you have maybe an area where you have similar needs with different employers, maybe they can talk to each other and come up with something more communal approach to the needs that they have.
As we go down an employer survey, and I only asked in the sense that you already have questions created.
WECO has,
Yeah.
PMA has.
Okay.
Stanton's talked about that before.
Yeah.
I also think we have good relationships with the chambers around the region, as well as our economic community development staff that are connected to all the major employers. So I think
that kind of reminds me too, like Goodwill, Publix, but I used to job coach for people with IDDs, so intellectual development disabilities. So that's like a whole capture right there. But those two places are really big, you know, employers of people with developmental disabilities. You might be able to also go into those communities a little bit more, like where I used to work, a place called Miller Ridge, you know, they are providing a lot of different services, but they have a lot of clientele who are all using Access Ride, WeGo, not Senior Ride, you know, but that's somewhere we might be able to look into. I'm not exactly sure how to like nail it down yet, because I just worked for that one company, but I know there's plenty others out there too that do that type of work and have access to people using those services already.
And maybe it is worth doing an employer, at least employer outreach, even if it isn't a separate survey, but doing interviews. So I think that's a really good point. We'll take that into consideration.
About talking with somebody that's on the steering committee with Imagine Nashville, who recently conducted that survey. They got 10,000 participants in a relatively short period of time. I know that was focused on Nashville, Davidson County, but I wonder if they've got any avenues that they might recommend for large response
Yeah,
pools.
definitely, everyone knew about that, that's for sure.
And they communicated in a way that, like we talked about earlier, they got past the language, the planning and all of that. They were just talking about basic needs. And the percentage response was incredible.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
And Daniel, again, this is Paula. Something you need to think about is all the different languages. Imagine Nashville had it available in Spanish, Arabic, and Kurdish, I believe. So that's
Right.
another consideration.
Yeah, that's a great point. We were talking internally about potentially having an event at Plaza Mariachi and translating the survey into Spanish. So we'll keep that in mind as well. Thank you. Any other thoughts? All right. So in terms of next steps, we'll have another steering committee meeting in April. I'll send out the calendar invite for that. It'll be here again. We'll have lunch again. We'll be working on the draft survey. We'll be asking for your feedback on that for both the provider survey as well as the community survey. We'll get back to you on more details on our first outreach event so that you all can start planning your schedules around that. And then if you have any additional feedback on any of the materials we presented so far, we had a pretty robust discussion about software needs and data needs, tracking ridership. I know you all are working on a new software. I don't know if you want to mention that.
So we just went live with a new routing software. It's called EcoLane, and I should have, I mean, it'll be pretty raw because we just started it in February, but that I can get all the data that you said that you needed from our riders in our 12 counties that we serve.
Okay.
But it's really exciting. The goal, of course, is to help us operate more efficient so that we're able to take more passengers. Kind of do more with less, because unfortunately we're in the same boat with drivers. So, but anyway, fingers crossed. We're still new at it, but it's looking very promising so far.
And we'll definitely be interested to learn how that process goes and if it could be replicable for other agencies.
Yeah, several human resource agencies across the state are using it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, if nobody else has any questions or thoughts, I think we're good for the day. Thank you all for attending. Feel free to grab a lunch on your way out if you haven't already. And we'll reach out with the recording, slides, minutes, as well as specific requests on the feedback that we're hopefully looking for. But thank you again.
Thank you. It's good. It's worth it. Go for it.
I think we kind of lost.
We move one through if it messes